Cheers. And welcome back to Baking and Brewing with Bob and Dominique. Today's a very special episode because everyone's on quarantine. Yay!
Happy quarantine! We've been having fun because we have a kegerator.
And fresh beer on tap. This is what I would like to call a fast lager. Lager. Probably one of the cleanest lagers I've ever made.
Oh my gosh, it is definitely one of the best lagers you've made. Good lager.
Gluten-free. And that's not gluten reduced, so nowhere in the process was there ever gluten. Fast lager, what makes that special? Well, I brewed this beer on March 24th, which means that usually you're gonna let a lager rest for 45 days. I didn't. I did use a very fun yeast though, which is 3470, which is modeled after the Weinheim-Stephaner lager yeast, which is straight out of Germany. So it was pale millet, raw millet, Munich millet, and buckwheat.
How interesting. It's so balanced. I don't know. Looking at these four ingredients and like looking and thinking how this is tasting, I'm bewildered.
It's almost crazy to me how much of a Munich Helles this tastes like. Clean, and it's malty, and it has very unpronounced hop note, very much like a Munich Helles.
I guess it really goes to show that you don't need to go all out with your grain bill to make a good beer.
True. In fact, I would recommend with lagers to keep it very simple.
Mm-hmm.
There is some credence to layering malts.
Yeah, but not necessarily for a lager. I feel like with the type of yeast that you use, you want it to speak for itself more so in a lager than in like an IPA.
And this is just so clean. I think one of the things that's great about this beer is
drinking it.
It's a perfect quarantine beer because it's about 5%, like right on the money, and it is smooth, easy drinking, good residual carbonation, pretty good body. I think that it's probably got maybe another day before it's perfect, I would say, in that keg right now.
I'm sure if we waited, it would taste better.
But then it also runs the risk of maybe tasting the same as it does right now.
So why wait? We're home, right?
Hooked on beer with Dominique.
I love beer. It's true.
Sounds so good when she says it, doesn't it?
I like how the buckwheat comes out in this.
But not in a way that is traditionally expected with buckwheat, which is usually a lot of people say some sort of pepper or clove, and then sometimes there's a vegetal note.
There is a little bit of pepper. I always get pepper from buckwheat, he's right.
Mm-hmm.
But with how much pale millet malt there is in here, it really balances out. Just because you don't want something to be very flat or just one-dimensional, I guess is what I mean when I say flat.
Saying that, I think some of the best beers out there in the world, are single malt and single hop. But it's hard to achieve everything you're looking for in a gluten-free malt bill, especially when you're going for specific characteristics, right?
Yeah.
So I was going for, of course, a light, easy drinking lager, but I still wanted that residual body. I wanted, a good, balance, not overly sweet, right? So it is easy drinking. I think that's one of the things that's tough about a lager is because it is so balanced, there is a certain element of, I forgot how many I drank, right? Like I've been to Munich as an 18-year-old, tried lagers in Germany, and I think that's one of the things that you're like, you get a prickle up your spine when you have a beer that reminds you of a time or a place or a setting. And that's, I think, one of the special elements of getting a beer right, is you get that satisfaction of every time it hits your lips.
That's
you
true.
are immediately transported to a place and a time. All the homebrewers at home will want to know what I did with the fermentation, right? A lot of speculation around high temp lager fermentations. This one I pitched low, but let it rise to about 68. When you get to 68 is A, you finish the ferment really quick. B, you also serve your diacetyl rest function. It's the pitching temperatures that I think really are where you're getting the initial esters because of that yeast waking up, putting off gases and reproducing and making more of itself. If it's in a lower temperature during that initial phase, that's where you're gonna get that real clean, real crisp taste that you keep wanting coming back for more.
It's always important to keep a like temperature gauge at least, because you don't want
Yeah.
it going like 68, 75,
Yeah.
66. Like, just it's important to make sure your equipment is well taken care of in this regard.
That's true. I mean, even if it's something as simple as an ice pack that you throw inside of like some sort of a jacket or something that you wrap around the fermenter.
Yeah, keep an eye on it.
Have a temperature probe in there. I think that's that pro tip. Being able to see what's happening, but then also being able to step back and let the yeast work. Those are two very difficult things for most brewers that are just starting, and it's what makes the lager a hard beer to achieve.
Really hard beer, because temperature is probably the biggest thing when it comes to the lager.
It's literally taken me almost 5 years to get a beer this good.
IPA. Cheers.
Now, one thing that we learned on this show is that you actually have to drink the beer and then taste it on the show soon, or else you run out.
Yes.
This is the last pour on our keg that we're trying. So
Definitely procrastinated.
really good though. I really love this IPA. It has Centennial and Idaho 7. Idaho 7 is a very tropically formatted hop, if you will.
It's a melody of hops, makes it nice and citrusy, but has a little bit of spice.
Yeah, there is an element of spice in here that's really nice. It keeps you coming back for more, really nicely drinkable. The difference from the kettle hops to the dry hop is that the kettle hops were T90 pellets, and the dry hop is actually cryo. So the bitterness on the actual kettle hops topped out at around 12-13%. The bitterness level IBU count, or what, alpha acids, if you will, going into the dry hop was about 23%.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit more bitter than sweet. This is definitely a dry IPA. Perfect for me. I think that's why this keg finished so fast without Dominique even drinking it. It actually makes more sense though to do this beer, this IPA first, because that beer is so unique and has so many different flavors in it. It's really hard to go back to another beer afterwards.
Yeah, that one kind of takes over, even though it's a lighter, sweeter beer. Let's go. Look at that.
Cloudy and creamy and sweet tasting and spicy and fruity. Everything in one glass.
It's literally amazing.
Literally?
Literally.
I think so too.
I love wit beers. I know some people say they're wheat beers, but I try to change how I pronunciate it because there is literally no wheat in this beer.
This is a wheat-free, wheat-style beer. Hey!
So we're gonna just say wit.
I love the mouthfeel on this beer because palate's really dry because of those citrus packets having their sugar actually eaten out by the yeast. This yeast was very voracious in the ferment, really clean Krausen on the top, and really good bubbling. I've seen sometimes there's an effect with those citrus packets that we put in there. It doesn't foam up as much. It's almost like you're putting in some sort of like a firm cap that's in these little flavoring packets. I'm curious if you do too much and you stop the ferment.
Interesting. If
Right.
you can do too much.
Well, so, a lot of these flavor packets are meant for raw consumption, right? You just pour it into a water bottle, shake it up, and start drinking it, right? That means it probably also has potassium metabisulfate in it, which is an anti-yeast agent.
I believe it has, it doesn't say anything about that in there. It's just citric acid and the powdered juice flavorings.
And the powdered juice flavoring is so good. This is a passion fruit lime.
Yeah.
And
I'll admit I could have put more lime.
oh, you held it back a little bit?
I did.
You didn't put the whole packet in?
No.
Interesting.
I don't believe you.
So this beer's right in like the 5% range, 4.5% range, I want to say, and it makes it perfect for summer. You can drink it most of the day long. A lot of people are liking this whole cloudy, juicy looking beer thing, which I'm in the middle of the road. To style, this looks great for a wit because wits technically tend to be
cloudy.
a little bit more cloudy.
Yeah, so it works for this one.
And the mouthfeel's coming from the fact that she used oats, raw millet, and lentils, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Or just lentils. You actually
I didn't use
buckwheat
oats.
instead of oats.
I have been trying to stay away from oats, but it could have been the raw millet too.
Some people that are gluten intolerant are also avenine intolerant, which is the protein in oats. Oats are most likely going to be gluten-free unless they're grown in a field that has also grown wheat.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting stipulation, but I think it's just safe. It's just safer that way. And
Did have and yeah, that's just because you need the extra protein count.
well, good head retention, good mouthfeel, all those come from protein.
Yeah, lentils seem to be lending themselves really well.
Yeah, I don't get too much like off flavor at all. I don't actually. If you would have not told me there was lentils in this beer, I probably wouldn't have known.
It's been a pretty great filler for head retention, and just to it's tough. In gluten-free homebrewing, you're always playing with different kinds of ratios of grains, respectively, because they cost so much. So it's always nice to get another grain in there that's naturally gluten-free that you can find at the supermarket that can help you get to that grain bill that'll make a beer you like.
I think a lot of people are scared of certain ingredients in gluten-free.
I was scared of lentils at first.
I was scared of lentils, I was scared of chestnuts, I was scared of chanterelle mushrooms, I was scared of pretty much anything that wasn't a grain.
And that's fair, because you don't know how it's gonna, like, when you first start out, you want to use basic ingredients so you know the process. You get the process, and then you start playing with the variations of what you put into it because you know what's supposed to happen during each stage of the process.
So I think as a gluten-free homebrewer, you have to have a little bit more, self-love, self-belief, believe in the process. You know, I've gotten to some beers recently, as we've seen on this episode, that blow some of my earlier beers just even about 9 months ago out of the water. Literally almost anything can affect a beer's flavor. And so I think that there's, let's let the professionals worry about making the same beer over and over again. As a home brewer, why would you make the same beer over and over again? And even if you did use the same recipe, it's probably going to taste a little bit different, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. I mean, these smaller systems aren't really meant to be precise. It's kind of like
it's not really
thing.
For selling to make money, really.
It is very pale. I don't know if the raw millet.
I love how you do that, by the way. I love how you do that. Pale?
I'm pronunciating. It's like a breakfast beer. That's what I would describe this as.
Quarantine baby. As like
Play with it in the back of your tongue a little bit, and like make a little air bubble, and then you like smash it. You know what I'm talking about?
Like blowing bubbles in my mouth.
It's like just
Do
creating.
you know, Bob? Do you know? Why don't you just bite into a lemon, huh?
It's like creating a little air pocket in your mouth for the bubbles to like grow, and then like go up.
I gotta be honest with you, I think this is where my palate has a limit, right? Because I haven't taken the culinary risks that Dominique takes every day with her teeth, like biting into raw citrus.
It's not every day. I like citrus. So what? Citrus is good for you anyways. I'd much rather eat citrus than a whole banana.